All right. Hello, everyone. Yeah, welcome to the kickoff meeting for the chat with your Codebase project. Um, yeah, I thought I'd start talking a little bit about subteams at GitLab because this is a very new organization way to organize people. Um, we are one of the first two groups doing this. The other one is the Duo chat and Duo workflow integration, the agentic chat, and we're the other one. But we've realized when developing some of these AI features, it spans a lot of teams. And uh, by having a core group like this together, we're hoping that we can kind of deliver faster, that we can, yeah, we can kind of have a focused set of work that we're all driving towards without a lot of the kind of communication challenges and back and forth and handoffs and trying to figure that out. Um, so all sub teams are meant to have are started with a product feature that we want, and then engineering decides if we need a sub team. At least this is how we think it's going to work. And then we find the right people, we pull them together. And then the other main thing is that, well, a couple other things. One is that they're meant to be short-lived, a couple weeks to a couple months, that kind of time frame. And then when it wraps up, there's a dedicated group, which will be code creation in this case, that kind of drives it going forward. So one of the challenges we've had with some features is that we do something and then we're not sure who owns it. So we want to make sure that's defined as well. So we're going to be kind of the guinea pigs, the testers of this new process. So as we go, if you have ideas on how this should work, how these sub teams should work, what's working, what's not, yeah, let us know or let me know. We get to help kind of define this new process. I like this a lot better than things we've tried in the past, which is, we've had a task force idea that was so-so. We borrow people onto teams. This is kind of the next iteration of that, I think. So, all right. So that's sub teams. Does anyone have, before I go on, any questions about just sub teams in general?
I have one. So,
Yeah.
in terms of like exit criteria for the sub team, how do we know like it's time? Like I know we have
Yeah.
a implementation plan with a couple of phases, but we can like once we get to like the final phase, you can always improve, you can always do more. So I'm wondering what that looks like.
Yes, that is a great question. And it's not, I think we should define, yeah, because even in okay, so I'll jump ahead a little bit. In that epic, Jordan had created a lot of that. He's on, not unfortunately, it's great. He's on PTO right now, so he's not here. But I've talked to him about it. So he did find a lot of that. I added in that implementation plan as a place to start talking with kind of this team. Um, but I think, yeah, I definitely think we need to have very explicit exit criteria, but it's not there yet. Um, I think my initial thought is in there, it's defined. There's kind of an MVC that is editor focused, not in the web IDE, not self-hosted yet. So my initial thought is that would be the scope of this sub team, is to get that rolled out. And then this sub team will disband and code creation will drive forward the future post MVC iterations. That's my thought. We'll talk a little bit more about uh, if that makes sense, but I think you're right, Maddie, that we need to define that up front because otherwise it'll drag on for a long time. So I think that's a good thing that we need to figure out.
And it's hard to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it might change, but I think we should at least, as this group, define what we think it should be. and
Yeah.
we'll document that, and we'll work towards that. And then if things change, we'll have to kind of agree to that.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we get too much further, yes, I want to introduce or have people introduce, or I can introduce people. So we're bringing in 3 different groups. So there's code creation, and in the agenda, I marked this as the primary driver just because that's the term that we're using kind of in the AI subteam definition as who's going to own this going forward. So that's why I put that in there. So that's Pam and Tian. Hello, Tian. Pam is in APAC, so she'll join the next meeting that I'm having later today, our time. There is another person from code creation that will be coming in later because we're getting more people joining the code creation team. But he's not on the code creation team yet, and there'll be an onboarding phase, so that's why I didn't list anyone here. From editor extensions, then it's Anna and John. Hello. And then global search is Maddie. Welcome. And yeah, so my idea of kind of how it would break down, I put in the Epic in that implementation plan, but thinking code creation generally will kind of drive the how we're building the embeddings. Although Maddie has a lot more experience with that than we do, so we'll rely on your expertise there as well. And then Maddie in the global search side, how we actually get all of that into the abstraction layer, what the schema kind of looks like. And then from the editor extension side, kind of what changes do we need to make to the UI? How do we travel from the extensions through the language server, if that's the right place, I'm assuming, into calling the abstraction layer, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of high level how I see it breaking down. And then, yeah, each sub team has a product manager and an engineering manager assigned specifically for it. In this case, Jordan, who's the PM for code creation, will be the PM for this sub team, and I'll be the EM. And Jordan's out this week, but he'll be back next week. Okay. Now for the specific project, I hope everyone's had a chance to at least look it over a little bit. Basically, the bigger picture is that we want the code creation team. We want a bigger or a better way for interacting with your code through like a knowledge graph / chat interface. The knowledge graph is another project we're working on that's a little longer term, longer scoped. And that will be a combination of this project, chat with your code base, and then also more of a knowledge graph representation of your code base with nodes and edges and we think both are going to be important and are both going to be needed for slightly different use cases. We're hoping that this chat with your code base project, though, is something that we can get done a lot sooner. So that's why we're going to start with this while the knowledge graph is still kind of being tested out and worked on. The original plan was that that it would do kind of semantic search using embeddings, using the abstraction layer that the global search team has been working on for the last, I don't know, 6 months or something. And gives us the ability to ask questions of our code base that we can't really answer right now. Finding dependencies, what are common imports? There's a list of questions in the Epic too. Are there unused methods? We think we'll be able to answer a lot of those types of questions using embeddings and using this semantic search. And they're things that we don't think we can answer in any other way right now. Um, does anyone have questions on that high level about the project?
Sounds like a good goal. It's
Okay.
next step. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I guess big picture, one of the areas that we want to improve at GitLab is just kind of this understanding of your repository. This feeds into that. Um, that should help with code suggestions. It'll help with chat, but we think it'll expand beyond that. Do a code review, do a workflow. There's a lot of things that we think could benefit from this type of expansion. Even just, and I know there was a demo this week or last week of this new search from the global search team. And that's not really an AI feature, but I think this could help in those cases too. So it doesn't have to be tied directly to like all these Duo features. So just browsing your code base, this should help with that as well. Okay, so the thing that I think the next step for this group, or what I'm hoping is we need to start making progress on this. And to do that, we need to come up with a plan. We have this epic. It has a lot of details in it. I created a rough, not set in stone implementation plan that kind of my best guess. But we need to review that, kind of agree if that makes sense or make changes to it if we need to. Start creating issues that people can actually start working on, um, and then kind of starting on those. And I'm hoping we can do all of that this week. I don't know what people's schedules are like, but I'm hoping this is something, at least getting that first phase of here's the next, few weeks of what they look like, having issues, having them assigned to people, having them estimated, getting that kind of work done. Um, that's really the next step for me, what I see that we need to get done. Um, does anyone have thoughts or questions about does that seem like a plan that um, a next step?
Yeah, I think related, I'm
Yeah.
wondering what does it mean for my current team? Do I stop attending my other team meetings? Do I nicely ask to have less and less reviews, things like that? Should this be my primary focus going forward from like today onwards?
That is an excellent question. And I'm not exactly sure. I should know the answer to this.
Not
Um, yeah, I think there'll be a period of transition. It might depend on each one of you might be slightly different. So it kind of depends what you're working on right now, what your plans are, kind of what you're committed to right now. I think going forward, there'll be kind of a ramp up. I imagine there'll be a slight ramp up period where you're kind of transitioning off, and then we'll figure out how much of your time is dedicated to this and how much is to like global search or editor extensions or code creation.
makes
Um, I think from the code creation side, it helps because I'm the manager also. So that team will probably just be mostly focused on this. Um, editor extensions, probably the same. Though the early phases, I think the other thing with this project is that the different people are going to be heavily involved at slightly different times. Um, I
yeah,
think global search, like Maddie, you'll probably be more involved early on, and then it'll taper off a little bit,
yes,
would be my assumption.
yeah.
And then editor extensions might be a little bit the opposite, where there's some involvement early on, kind of defining the basics, but then there might be a little lull while we get all the data set up, and then it'll ramp up for editor extensions. Um,
Mhm.
so I'll try to get a better answer than that.
That's cool.
Um, but
Or do we want a daily stand-up, like asynchronous daily stand-up, something like that? How do we keep track of what each other is working on and provide updates. We can decide that as a team. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do people think? That's easy to set up. Like just using
I think
Geekbot or
early
something.
on, it's better to have more communication until we get a bit of establishment, and then we sort of have an understanding of what people are working on, and then it can, you know, lessen its strictness, I guess. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, good question. Okay, I'll set it up, and then we'll see how it goes. If we'll start putting, and I'll probably post it right in that subteam Slack channel. Yeah, thanks for taking notes. And we'll see how it works. We can change it. I'll try to make it simple, a simple update for Geekbot, but yeah, we'll do that and then we can take it from there. Yeah, happy to kind of iterate on the process, but I think that one makes a lot of sense. And since we have team members kind of across the globe, more async communication is going to be critical. Uh,
Do we want to set up a secondary, just technical sync? You know, essentially not this kickoff, but in the next either today or tomorrow, just to kind of go over this is the current path, what we're doing for chat today. I would imagine that this is living in Duo chat. Um, unless someone says otherwise. It just seems to make sense as being this is additional context. Um, and either someone is directly included, this is I want to chat to a code base, either what I'm ambiently, around because I'm inside of an editor, um, or even on the web, hey, I happen to be on this project's, repository. That's a good indication that I'm probably asking about this project and its code. So we can kind of figure out what that user experience is there. But because of that, we can start kind of saying, here's how things work today. Is that the expectation from like the editor extension side? That might just be we're sending along a context of this is your repository and your branch name. And that might be it, that and your question. So we just kind of want to figure out is what is the scope of work? And that might take a technical question or a technical conversation initially.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Um, yeah, does somebody want to set that up for me?
Yeah, I was also have a question related to that. So, do
Yeah.
we already have a architecture design, for example, different components and how different components talk to each other, the protocols, the interface? So, are we ready for implementation or are still in the designing phase?
No, as far as I know, we don't have that, not specific to this project. So I think that would be something, one of the early things, and maybe that's one of the first things we work on, or somebody works on doesn't have to be a full architecture blueprint, but at least a high level, rough sketch out of how things talk to each other and where this fits in. I think that would be very beneficial to drive this forward.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the designing may be the first step, and then we can have a technical discussion. Yeah.
Or maybe vice versa. Maybe it makes sense to have a technical discussion with the sort of brainstorming, figure out what our plan is. Then we'll kind of come back and set out our pieces. Because I think there's going to be a couple like domain boundaries we just want to define our interfaces at. Um, uh, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that's good. Um, the other thing, and maybe this is more of from the technical side around the MCP. I know that's getting a lot of buzz across GitLab and across industry, I guess. I don't know. Everywhere has been talking about this now, but I think that's definitely something we should. That really wasn't a thing. I mean, it probably was, but it wasn't things people were talking about even a couple weeks ago when we started this Epic and this idea. So we should think about how that fits in, if it fits in. Um,
I would recommend everybody go check out Claude Code. We all have access to Claude. Definitely install Claude Code's NPM package, CLI tool, point it to a repository, start asking questions. It is pretty amazing. Um, for needing no like embeddings or anything like that. It's just using tool calling. So
yeah.
pretty slick.
And yeah, I don't know enough about it, but yeah, I I think there will definitely be using this at GitLab soon. Is it a tool on top of this chat with your code base that uses embeddings? Is it like potentially they can live together for
I think it's
different
a little of
cases?
both. And I think
Yeah,
that you might just it's kind of flips on its head the traditional way of gathering context. Because prior to this, a lot of things were one-shot prompts. That was sort of
yeah,
the state of the world. And so in order to make your prompt count, you ended up doing some like natural language processing stuff ahead of time, which meant I got to kind of understand the query. Let's add additional context without trying to flood the context window because either you're paying for, more tokens or you hit a point where it's like the LLM I can only take so much before, you know, um, either you have a hard limit or you just lose efficacy. You just don't your LLM does not work well with just flooding context. Things have gotten better from where they were a year ago, but that's still kind of the goal. The shorter the context, the more attention it can spend on the right question. And so the nice thing about MCP is it takes the other way around. It says, hey, the LLM can be my reasoning engine. And I can ask a question. It can say, you know what? I need two more things from you. And then I can answer your question better. Um, you just have to kind of give it a state of the world that you can ask questions about. And then you do this sort of like agentic chat until you finally go back to the main user with, here's an answer. It takes a little longer because you're doing that chat back and forth, but um, it's it's tremendously helpful from a you usually get what you want pretty quickly without having to you know mess around with the LLM to make sure that you're supplying the right context.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can check with that other sub team that's starting and see if what they're thinking about it too. Yeah, my my first instinct is that we do what we said. We'll have a technical discussion. We'll design kind of a high level overview of what it's going to look like, just using embeddings and semantic search, and then maybe another track is if instead we used MCP, what would that look like, or how would that change? Could it do the same thing? Maybe that's a research task that can happen kind of in parallel, or I think that's how I would approach it. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think when we design the interfaces, we also want to keep in mind that this is a tool. It's not just like a feature that we built for, it's like a single use case. So if we end up not using code embeddings for like the specific thing, it can be used for your chat, it can be used for workflow. It's like another tool that like an agent can use. So I'd like us to have that like design principle as well.
Yeah, great point. All right. Anything else that people want to bring up for this kickoff? We'll be in touch a lot more, but I'm glad we were able to meet and get started here. Oh,
Yeah, I guess I would just ask, so, in addition to the technical kickoff, I guess, are there any other like immediate next steps that you'd like members of this group to carry forward?
Yeah, I think the next step, the technical kickoff will be great. I think sorry, someone's at my door, so my dog's going crazy. And I think reviewing that implementation plan, especially the phase one, see if that makes sense. And we'll, either in that Epic or in Slack, let's talk about, does that make sense? Let's do that in the next couple of days. And then we can go ahead and start creating issues so we can start working on some of that.
Cool.
All right. Well, it's great seeing everyone. Glad we have everyone here. This is a great team. I'm excited. And yeah, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me anytime. And we'll go from there.
Sweet. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.